Welcome to the Education Insights Focus on Behavior podcast. We're here to talk about all things behavior in the world of education. We take the science of behavior and break it down for educators into easily implementable steps, and we're excited to spend some time with you. Get ready to talk through behavior, what works, what doesn't work, and how we can all improve our work in schools so we as educators can be more fulfilled and our students can be more successful.
Hello, welcome to Education Insights Focus on Behavior. I'm your host, Dr. Selena Layden, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel Irwin. Hey, Daniel.
Hello.
And Dr. Daria Lorio-Barston. Hey, Daria.
I'm going to borrow Emily's line. Hello there.
And as always, our producer, Emily Muse.
I'm going to keep my line. Hello there.
All right. So to start us off today, we decided we wanted to play a little game. And so we're going to see how this works. But what the goal of the game is essentially is we're going to try to replicate the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Sorry. So Emily is actually going to walk us through kind of what the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon is, and then I'll explain how we're going to play the game today.
Okay, so the idea of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon says that if you take any actor, basically anybody you could think of, with less than 6 jumps, 6 movies, 6 co-appearances, 6, whatever the case may be, whatever actor you pick can be linked to Kevin Bacon.
Yes, and this game, so it's based on this broader idea of 6 degrees of separation, which I think actually was in a movie. I can't remember, but that any two people on Earth should be able to be connected to each other within 6 degrees or 6 jumps, as Emily said. So we're gonna try this out and see how we can do with this today. So Daniel has found a site with a random generator of actors. So he's going to give us 2 actors, and between us, we're going to see if we can get them connected to each other. So Daniel, who is our first pair?
The first pair, as generated by random website, is Matt Damon and Brendan Fraser. Matt Damon and Brendan Fraser.
Okay.
Okay, I can't help but think of like Matt Damon outside of either Ben Affleck or Robin Williams or Minnie Driver from Good Will Hunting. So, Selena, pick one of those and we will continue the pattern.
The only way you can get them connected is through what?
No, I'm just saying, like, when I think of Matt Damon, I immediately think of like Good Will Hunting, and then I think about those 3 people. So I'm trying to figure out if we can move the ball rolling, but we got to pick one to connect to Brendan Fraser.
So I had to go look up the movies that Brendan Fraser had been in because I'm like, I actually think they've been in a movie together. And I had to look up what the name of it was. It's called School Ties.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yep. So that was
One
only 1
and
degree.
done.
They have 1 degree of separation.
One and done. All right, Daniel, give us another pair. Selena's a whiz at this.
That
Oh,
was
maybe
less
not.
fun than I wanted it to be. I was really
I'm
hoping we'd do
sorry.
a deep dive into Airheads or Encino Man, but here we are. Okay.
Blast from the
Second,
past would have been
second
another great
pairing,
option.
should you choose to accept it, is Jim Carrey and Jason Statham. Jim Carrey and Jason Statham.
So who was in Ace Ventura or The Mask are the 2 movies that pop in my head.
Cameron
That's all I got too. Oh,
Cameron
you know what?
Diaz.
The one where he's like in a fake world. The
Oh,
Truman
The
Show.
Truman Show.
Oh, it's a great movie. Well, he was in that with Ed Harris. Ed Harris and Jason Statham have the same hairstyle. Does that count?
I don't think that counts.
Too bad.
They have the same hairstyle.
Are we
Yeah.
just saying like there's another bald person that was in a Jim Carrey movie? Well, he was bald in The Mask when he put the mask on, and there you go.
I don't think that's how this
I don't think it
works.
works that way. No.
Okay, so
So let's go backwards.
Jeff
Let's go.
Daniels is
Okay.
in Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey.
Yes.
Jeff Daniels is in other movies.
Or the
So,
show Newsroom.
I'm so bad at this.
but Jason Statham was in all the Fast and Furious movies, right?
Yes.
I've never seen them, so that's not going to help a whole lot, but I'm pretty sure he was in them.
Wait, was he?
I think so, yes. I don't know if he was in all of them.
Jason Statham was also in like what are the like Guy Ritchie movies?
All right, on it, friends.
Those
I'm
from the
gonna look
90s.
up all the movies that Jason was in.
I
What?
think that's the hard part is, oh, oh, I figured it out.
Okay, let's hear it.
Um, Jason Statham was in The Italian Job
Mm.
with, hold on, maybe I didn't figure it out. Maybe I was too proud of myself. There has to be someone who was in this movie.
Okay, hold on.
I got it.
Was
And I Googled it.
oh
You
man,
cheat.
I'm not gonna say it out loud, but I was really frustrated.
You just couldn't do it
is there a
anymore.
movie that they're in together? Can we link Brad Pitt to Jim Carrey?
You don't need to, according to my
Oh
AI
boy.
generated results.
Oh, you went there already?
All right, I've got it. All right, I really do have it this time. So, Jason Statham was in The Italian Job with Seth Green, who was
Mm.
in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, right?
Hmm.
Is that the name of the movie? With Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey. Yeah, well done.
Way to
Nice.
go.
Daniel has a different answer. I can see it.
Yeah,
Let's
it
hear
was
it. What did AI say? Tell
Jim
us.
Carrey was in Yes Man with Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper was in Dungeons and Dragons with Michelle Rodriguez, and Michelle Rodriguez was in Furious 7 with Jason Statham.
I did it in two. I think
Well,
I
you're
win.
smarter than AI, so
There you
way to be. We all knew that already, though, Selena.
go. Oh, thanks.
True. I mean, her first one was one and done. So,
All right, what's our third one?
Johnny Depp and Nicolas Cage.
Daria's smiling too much.
I am smiling because, it's Johnny Depp. Okay. Johnny Depp, and I'm sorry, I didn't hear you past that. Who's the second person?
Nicolas Cage.
Okay, there you go. Who are okay, so Nicolas Cage, was he ever in the movie or any movies with Angelina Jolie? Probably not.
I feel like he's in so many.
Well, that's true. I'm trying to figure out like, okay, what are the movies that he was in? American Treasure.
Are
Was
you
that
talking about Johnny Depp or Nicolas Cage now?
Nicolas Cage? I'm going backwards.
They were in Gone in 60 Seconds together.
Johnny Depp was in Gone in 60 Seconds.
No, Nicolas Cage was.
Oh,
Mm.
I was like, I don't think so. But Nicolas
Oh,
Cage
with Angelina
was
Jolie?
Angelina Jolie.
Oh, great. And then Angelina Jolie was with Johnny Depp in The Tourist.
Oh, look at you. You got it in two. I will tell you, just because I put it in AI and there's a more direct connection that I would never have guessed.
All right. What was Johnny Depp in?
They both appeared in the 1984 film A Nightmare on Elm Street.
So you know what?
Oh,
That was Johnny Depp's first movie. That part I knew, but what I didn't know was that Nicolas Cage was in it. Who was he in that?
I don't know.
Well, I figured you had the full information.
No, I put into AI, connect these two people.
Well, do we need to check the accuracy of AI on
Well,
this?
yes, always, but probably not for this.
All right, so listeners, when you're driving in the car, this is a fun game you can play with yourself just by thinking of 6 degrees.
But if it makes you feel better, Daria, it does add that although Cage's part was cut from the final theatrical version, he was still in the original production. So
I
I'm
was
gonna
gonna
let
say
you have the
my
win on this
AI
one.
is saying he was not in Nightmare on Elm Street franchise.
He
So
apparently was in the
that's
original
a
production.
deep cut.
Yes.
That is deep cut.
So you would have to, yeah, you would have to know that. So Daria, I'll give you the point for that.
I'll take it.
All right. So you're all probably wondering what this has to do with anything that we normally talk about.
I
And
sure
what,
am.
uh, well, what we want to talk about today is the connection between two things, academics and behavior. And for some of you, that may seem like a really clear connection, and for others, it may not be quite as clear. So, how are academics and behavior connected?
Well, they're connected in a lot of ways, and I think the most direct connection is that we can know things. We can know a lot of things, but our behavior is the thing that lets other people know that we know it, right? And so, whether it's an exam or a quiz in a class, whether it's writing a paper or putting together a project, our knowledge is demonstrated through our behavior. Um, Without that, there'd be no way to assess what I know, what I don't know. Um, And there's all kinds of different ways to kind of frame that up. But I think that's the most direct connection is the idea that unless I have the behavior to share my knowledge or demonstrate my knowledge or apply my knowledge, um, teachers, whoever, won't know that I actually possess that knowledge.
Yeah, so just to put a concrete example around this, I think, we can assume that a student knows how to multiply if they can answer multiplication questions on a quiz or out loud or whatever, but we don't know how that internal process is working. We can't observe it, we can't see it. And so that behavior of actually writing down the answer, or verbally saying the answer, is demonstrating that academic knowledge that we're hoping that they have. I think the other piece here that occurs is that in the way that we teach academics is actually really useful in the way that we should be teaching behavior too. And so if we think about things like the science of reading, which has become, really, I think, well known, it's this idea of how do we systematically look at reading skills, where are the deficits, where are the strengths, and then within those, make sure that our interventions to teach reading are matching where the skill deficits lie. I think behavior can be really conceptualized very similarly. And as we think of the science of behavior, we think about, okay, these are the skill deficits that this student is having or is engaging in. And so, how do we provide interventions that will match those skill deficits? And so, for example, if a student has limited verbal capability, we may need to teach them functional communication because right now they're communicating through hitting, scratching, biting, running away, whatever the case may be. And so that's one example. But this is true for all students, right? It's true for all kids. And so it might be that I'm not solving my math problems because I don't actually know how to do them. So instead of not solving my math problems like I'm supposed to be, I'm talking to my neighbor, and now we're both distracted and not doing what we're supposed to be doing. Well, getting down to identifying where is the help needed. It's not that I necessarily need help in not talking to my neighbor. It's that I need help with the math problems in this case. And so again, just being really systematic and thinking through why is this happening? Like what's the function is is a really useful way to teach academics and behavior.
I think, Selena, sometimes we forget in the classroom that teaching behavior is a really big part of our responsibilities as teachers and educators too, right? I think when we design our lessons, when we develop the learning activities that match the objectives and all those pieces, I think sometimes we focus so much on teaching the academics piece, and we just make this false assumption that kids will just pick up behavioral skill kind of by osmosis. And so I think it's important for us to remember when we are thinking about academics and behavior is that part of our role and responsibilities is to teach, to actually actively teach and use like explicit teaching the way we do in academics, use that in behavior as well, right? Because with your example of I don't need help not talking to my peer. Sometimes we do, not in your example, right? But in at other times, we do need supports with somebody actually directly teaching us what to do instead of the behavior that we're seeing. And it's not just in terms of like interfering behaviors, but I see that a lot in the classroom with kids having to learn how to do self-regulation, how to self-regulate their own behavior, or with watching kids do some social skills or kind of the lack thereof in certain classrooms, right? And so I think it's another important thing for us to remember as educators that just like we do lesson plans for our academics, we also have to have lesson plans and learning activities and those opportunities of direct teaching with reinforcement feedback and all those other great practices around behavior as well.
Well, and I think, one of the things we think about in academics a lot with our spiraling curriculum or whatever the case may be is we don't just assume that kids know the three types of rocks. We have to teach them the three types of rocks, right? I'm getting the look from Daniel. He's trying to think of the three types of rocks right now. I could tell. But we have to directly teach that. And just because I taught it to you one day doesn't mean that I can assume that you're going to know it 6 months from now, right? As many of you may be also trying to puzzle what the three types of rocks were. I promise you probably learned it at some point, but it's not salient to you. And if we think about behavior similarly to your point of explicitly teaching, just because I told you what to do, I can't assume that you necessarily either know how to do that, you know when to do it, or you are going to do it all the time like you're supposed to. And so that explicit teaching of behavior, just as we do explicit teaching in academics, is really critical.
So I think we did cover the three types of rock in an earlier episode of this podcast. So I can't remember which one it was, and that was the face I was making. I was trying to remember when we talked about it. The other thing, and to your point, Selena, is really thinking about teaching behavior in academics and the application of Bloom's taxonomy, right? So each stage of Bloom's has verbs that are associated with it. So there's knowledge, right? And so we can define or we can list or we can identify. And so from a reading standpoint, from a math standpoint, like we can say what it is. From a behavioral standpoint, we can list the classroom rules or we can list the behaviors that we should be doing. But I think as we think through teaching academics as behavior, we really have to focus in on what those verbs are at each level, so that we're writing goals that are measurable, that are actionable, that are observable. But really keeping in mind all those things. And I think on the flip side of that, I think it's important to think about our behavior instruction in a way that honestly, I hadn't really thought about it from the Bloom's taxonomy. Like I can identify the rules. Do I comprehend them? Like, can I explain why they're important? Do I get that? And then am I applying those rules in the right context? Um, and then moving into some of that like self-management and self-evaluation and understanding these are the rules that I need to be followed. These are the behaviors that are part of those rules. Did I do those things in context? I'm evaluating, I'm synthesizing, I'm putting all that together and changing my own behavior. So I think when we look at that, we look at the taxonomy, really focusing on those verbs that are associated with each level and scaffolding and building skills, both academically and behaviorally, and thinking about kind of the depth of that knowledge.
And I think you make a really good point because a lot of times the rules in classrooms are things like respect yourself, respect others, respect the classroom, or respect the school, right? Which are totally fine if those are your rules. But what do those mean? Because what those mean to a kindergartner and what those mean to a 10th grader, or even within the same class, may not be the same thing depending on people's learning histories, right? If at your house it's totally okay to take off your shoes and walk around, you may think that that's okay to do at school, but generally we don't like kids to take their shoes off at school. And we may say, that's not respecting the classroom. Well, if they didn't know that, then it just makes it really hard to be. We need to make sure that children actually understand what the rules are and what those behaviors around those rules look like. And that really does take instruction. We can't just make assumptions that they're going to magically know that.
Well, and in thinking about Bloom's taxonomy, and Daniel, I really appreciate that point. I think about this adage or a sticker on a water bottle that I've seen lately that says Maslow before Bloom, right? And kind of connecting also all the pieces that we have talked previously on our episodes too. Because I think we need to remember the student's hierarchy of needs and going back to creating a supportive learning environment first. And when we have that part, then we can spend our time and energy providing meaningful instruction around both academics and behavior using the Bloom's taxonomy, right? But I think there are a couple of moving pieces of, in order for us to be able to teach academics or to teach behavior, in order for our kiddos to be able to focus and learn, they have to have that supportive learning environment first and have that place where they feel like they are welcome. They feel like they are seen in the classroom. They feel like they are respected, they can bring their whole little authentic selves, or in high school, maybe not so little. But I think those are the pieces that we also need to remember to have almost as a prerequisite before we start teaching any sort of skills, be it academic or be it behavioral.
And I think the other kind of side of that, and it's sort of kind of related, maybe it's a third thing, is sort of the idea that if we're talking about academics and we're talking about students demonstrating their academic knowledge, that it's really important to consider like the process for showing that. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but sort of the idea that if the student is expected to demonstrate knowledge on the types of rock by writing a paper, how do we sort of draw the distinction between this is a writing deficit versus this is a knowledge deficit, right? So there's the procedural, the executive functioning piece, the organization, the planning, all of those things that go into certain ways that students demonstrate knowledge. And then there's the content. And so I don't know how to better say that aside from like what's the process to get to where we're going, and are there barriers there that are preventing students from demonstrating the knowledge they have because of deficits elsewhere, not necessarily in the knowledge.
Well, and I think, Daniel, your comments get to the heart of the assessment, right? Like, what is it that we are assessing, and how are we actually assessing the knowledge? And I think that brings us to that piece of making sure that our assessments are actually measuring what we think they are measuring, right? That there is that alignment. Because to your point, we probably, among the three of us, know plenty of students for whom writing is not their preferred subject, and they're not going to write about anything, much less the three types of rocks. Whereas if they were given a different format of assessment, they would love to sing about the rocks or do a presentation or any of those other things. So I think it's important for us to think about how is it that we're asking students to demonstrate their knowledge? Because I do think that, to this conversation, that sometimes what we are measuring is not actually what we are measuring, or what we are asking kids to demonstrate doesn't actually connect to our learning objectives or the assessments that we use or any of those things. And I think that's something that we do have to pay attention to and unpack and make sure that there is an alignment between the Bloom's taxonomy on our curriculum and on our instruction and then on the assessment, right? Like, those things have got to match. And to Selena's earlier point, not only do they have to match, but they do have to be written in a way that is explaining the behaviors that we are looking for students to demonstrate.
Yeah, and then just to, further emphasize this, and then the instruction has to occur around that, right? Like we cannot just assume just because we wrote it down or just because we told someone that now they're going to do that, whether it's math, reading, behavior, social skills, any of those things, right? We have to provide those opportunities for instruction and practice and feedback.
Yeah, and Selena, I think about that statement, just because you taught it doesn't mean they learned it, right? And I
100%.
remember myself as like a brand new teacher, and I remember I was working so hard, and I swear to you, my lessons I thought were like the bee's knees. But if kids couldn't demonstrate the skill, then I didn't really do my part. And it took me a second to piece together how to align that part. And I think that is true whether we are teaching an academic skill, whether we are teaching the behavioral skill, whether we're trying to help kids learn how to interact with one another. That kind of falls in the between line, right? Because I think about that example of asking kids to go and do work collaboratively or work in a small group. And sometimes they know the content, they know what they're talking about, but they are not missing that. They are missing those skills of being able to have a conflict in a healthy manner, being able to disagree with each other respectfully, being able to share their perspectives from the first point perspective, right? Like, and those are also the skills that yes, they're behavioral, but they support academics, so we really do need to have them. And guess who it falls on to teach those, right? It's the answer is it's still those of us who are in the classroom teaching. And so I think we just need to remember that the things that we're talking about, the principles we're talking about, is it's true for whether we're talking about emotional regulation, behavioral, academics, or anything else we're teaching.
Yeah, and so I think this puts kind of a nice bow on our connections today, that academics and behavior are connected. And I hope it does kind of help to conceptualize them as kind of two sides of the same coin. Like I said, I think the way that we think about them and the way that we teach can be very similar. So if you're feeling like I don't really know how to teach behavior, or I don't really know how to, you do. You have we have lots of skills at our disposal that we can use to teach behavior in an effective way. So, and just because I know that it might be killing some of you, the three types of rocks are igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. So, with that, I will bring us to our unpaid ad for this episode. And I think Daria is going to talk to us about that. So, I'll hand it over to you.
I do, thanks. So this week's resource that we have found for you is hopefully something that you can literally log on, check out, and be able to put in practice immediately in your classroom. It comes to us from the Center for Intensive Behavioral Supports, which is a center at the Illinois State University, which is done in a partnership with the State Board of Education in Illinois. And it brings together a variety of resources around lots of different topics all around behavior and de-escalation of behavior, and kind of restorative practices and those kind of things. But their resource section specifically is really helpful because if you're thinking about, oh gosh, I know how to teach academics, but now I'm asked to teach behavior and all the emotional regulation skills and the social skills. So don't worry, this is where that Center for Intensive Behavioral Supports come in. Within their resource sections, you have lots of different things that can help you and serve kind of as those aids in teaching some of those skills. So there's a really cool balloon visual, which is very similar to kind of zones of regulation or being able to identify how you're feeling, or kind of similar to a 5-point scale. There are different examples of different breathing exercises that you can directly teach your students so they can regulate their own bodies and their own emotional regulation a little bit better, and lots of other excellent resources. So we certainly encourage you to check that out because that's something that could be helpful for your classroom, whether you're teaching preschool or whether you're teaching seniors and graduating class of 2026. So hopefully all of you will be able to find something that is helpful to your classroom practices.
Great. Thanks, Daria. And we will link that in the show notes if you are curious and want to check that out. All right. That takes us to the end of our episode today. Daniel, Daria, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And Emily, thank you so much for your help.
Thank you.
And we will see you all on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Education Insights Focus on Behavior. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can join the conversation by emailing us at cbis@odu.edu, visiting www.cbisva.org, or following us on Facebook, Instagram, X, or Blue Sky at CBISVA. Special thanks to the Virginia Department of Education for their support of this project.